Amazing. All right. Well, it is 6:05. Let's get started. You have all been part of at least one of these tastings in the series, so I am not going to waste your time introducing myself, Allison, or Mike. You know us all well by now. But instead, I have some exciting news. Last time I promised that we would be announcing our official dates for our upcoming series. This is going to be a 4, maybe 5-part series, and I need all of your input. And so I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Please just feel free to respond in the chat. But first, the tasting series, it's going to be called the Old World, where we're going to be visiting Croatia, Slovenia, Armenia, and Georgia, and potentially Hungary. So this is where wine began. This is where wine originated from. I find that a lot of people don't actually know that wine is produced in these regions, which is totally false. They're small, they may be small countries, but they have mighty, mighty wines, and they are worth tasting because they really give us context to how wine used to be created and how differently wine or similarly wine can be created today, depending on the winemaker. So Croatia starts us off on March 19th, which is, it's the 12th, so a month and about a week away. So I'm going to launch that. You guys are going to be the very, very first people to get invited. We hope you are interested. I'm going to make it so you can join 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them, one of them, whatever, however many classes, to create the flexibility. I believe it's going to be similarly priced as this bundle was, of course, getting cheaper as you add more classes, because we want to encourage you all to come and listen in on all of them. But of course, we know that spending all of your Fridays with us sometimes isn't what you want to do. I don't know why. So here is my big question. So we have locked down Croatia, Slovenia, Armenia, and Georgia. We really want to do Hungary, specifically 2 wines. Tokaj, which is their sweet wine. We've never done a sweet wine before. Actually, in the almost 40 virtual tastings that I myself have hosted, I have never featured a sweet wine because I know some people absolutely adore them, but some people really, really don't. So the Hungarian wines would be Tokaj and Ferment, which is a dry red wine.
White wine.
Ferment's not red? Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm lying. So it would be a dry white wine and a sweet white wine. It would be at a different price point because these wines are gorgeous and amazing, and they are definitely more expensive. It wouldn't be, anyways, I'll add the pricing, but if you're interested in sweet wine, if you could just go ahead and say like yes or I am or whatever in the chat, and that would just give us a little bit of a basis on whether or not we entertain this idea, because of course we want to bring you guys exactly what you want to drink.
And sweetness, we should also clarify, Tokaj has levels of sweetness. We are not talking about a 5 petunios that's like honey, which is delicious, but you literally take a spoonful and you're happy. This is going to have sweetness, but acidity and be a nice balanced explanation of a sweet wine.
Yeah, and they would come in smaller bottles too, so you're not going to get like a whole 750 milliliter full crazy thing of sweet wine. And the cool thing about Tokaj is you actually can leave it in the fridge for longer than you would have to drink a normal bottle of white wine. So it would be something that you could continue to enjoy over the next, I don't know, 3-4 weeks. Allison, Mike, longer, less?
Yeah, well, it's not fortified, but yeah, I mean, the residual sugar will maintain itself a bit longer. And these are cool wines. They're just, they come in 6-packs, and like all of these wines, they're just not as inexpensive as we would like.
They're not easy to find, and they'll develop in the fridge over time. Like, give them in 2 weeks, they'll taste more of the acid will come through, more of the herbal stuff. I mean, Tokaj is amazing. That's incredible.
And, again, not that you could do this with Hungarian or Georgian or Armenian wine for the most part, unless you go to Glendale. these aren't wines you're going to find in a grocery store shelf. There'll be some of them. You'll find more Croatian wines now in specialized wine stores, but you're not. And you'll find Tokai when you're looking to spend the money, because they can get in the upwards of $100 a bottle for a great sweet wine. But you know, these are it. It's not like New Zealand or even Australia, where we really tried to shy away from going to the grocery store brands and get you something that was affordable, but also something that was, you know, accessible.
Yeah. Yeah. Marcy says, willing to try. I'm going to Glendale, so maybe I'll go shopping. And yeah, I mean, so if we do end up doing this, and I mean, so I'll say that in a minute. If we do end up doing this and you do end up finding a Tokai for cheaper or something closer in one of your shops, let us know. And we're more than happy to have you come in the chat with your own wine. And we would just love to be able to chat about Hungarian wine, because it is so unique to a lot of us. But yeah, so that's our big exciting upcoming news. You will all get information and the first links on that after this tasting. I'm going to be launching that email, I think, on Monday. And anything else to say about those wines, Allison or Mike? Any teasers? Lots of wines none of us can produce, so it's going to be really funny watching us struggle.
Pronounce. None of us can pronounce. Yeah. There's no. Yeah, we're going to be so lost.
They don't like vowels. They don't.
There's
like vowels.
K's and Z's and J's like all clumped together with no vowels. It's horrifying. It's going to be amazing.
If we were doing this in person, I'd throw out like little pieces of chocolate to those who could like pronounce it right. Which used to happen in like my elementary school. Anyways, I digress. Let's start drinking. Please, as always, don't wait for us. You're welcome to drink any wine in whatever order. We will, of course, start with the white wine and go to the red wine. But if you're jazzed about the red and want to just dive into that, please feel free. And then one other fun question that I have for everyone. Has anyone been to South Africa? Show of hands. Allison. Awesome. And a couple more people. Amazing. Well, if you have any South African stories, I would really love to do our story corner again. So please save that till the end. And after we get through the tasting, I would really love to hear your times in South Africa, because that just kind of brings it all in and it's so fun to hear. And I would love to go there one day. So make me want to go there even more than I already do. Tonight, Allison is going to be giving us our country overview. I am going to be going over the winery, and Mike is going to be giving us our wonderful tasting notes and food pairings. So without hesitation, Allison, you want to dive in?
So South Africa, I was there, but I was not there for wine. I was there when I was studying abroad in college. It was one of the stops because I went on semester at sea. And the only thing I can say is I was on the very first passenger ship to dock in South Africa after apartheid ended. So that was that's pretty much it. And I went to Cape Town, and Cape Town is a beautiful town similar to Santa Barbara. I think they're sister cities. And that's sort of the crux of where you will find wine regions from there out, all along the coast. So South Africa has been producing wine. We call South Africa we think of it as New World, right? They're hip with their screw caps and their labels, and they're new to our markets in the last, kind of 20 years. But South Africa is a new world in an old world body. They have been producing wine for more than 350 years. They are one of the most prominent in the Southern Hemisphere, and they are the 9th largest producer of wine in the world. They are actually recognized, again, this could be debatable by our next series, as being the cradle of mankind. So, I mean, it is the African continent, so that is quite possible. As for perspective, because I know you guys love this part, South Africa is about 3 times the size of the state of California. Woo! There you go. And as I said, you can think of it as the old world meets the new world. So we are going back a really long time. The tradition started when the Dutch East India Company that traded spices and all things decided to establish a halfway pit in the southern point of Africa in the 1600s, in 1652. And the idea was to provide their Indian-bound merchant ships with fresh produce. And so shortly after that, in 1655, grapes were first planted. And that's when the sweet wines of Constantia, which I'll talk about in a little bit, right near Cape Town, where I said I went, became lauded all over Europe. And they were drunk throughout Europe. And unfortunately, South Africa then went through a phase in the 18th century that it really hurt their industry. There was a lot of resistance to Cape wines from European and Far East export markets. The quality was not there. There was a real shortage, a critical shortage of oak vats, and some of the vats they used had been used previously to brine meat, which just does not sound like a very good result for wines. And, you know, the climate was hard for the European settlers. So they were still trying to figure their way out in this new land. And then the industry, like in most wine regions do, they really struggled to find the best varieties for each district and then adapt their winemaking techniques for those local areas. And so the 18th century was sort of seen as a trial and error period. By the 19th century, they started to have a more booming industry. The British occupation of the Cape was very beneficial for Cape wines. And then that's when they increased over the next 45 years from like 13 million vines to 55 million. And that's how much they grew in 45 years. But then again, they had another disaster because 1861, Britain and France stopped fighting. And that means that Britain started buying French wine again. And if one of the sweetest wines was Constantia in South Africa, there was Sauternes in Bordeaux. So the English went back to their French allies. And then phylloxera hit a few years later in 1886, which hurt the vines. And then there was a war within the country in 1899. So South Africa then had another challenge. The wine industry was obviously in chaos during this whole time. And add to that, there was a proliferation of plantings. And what happens when you plant too much is you get overproduction. So followed another kind of 25 years of difficulty. So luckily, the quality of wine production has improved and South African wines have begun to become more prevalent in the US pre-COVID, because in COVID, we know that twice, I believe it has just been lifted again. Twice South Africa stopped all exports of all wines in order to stop business and for the safety of the people. I'm not sure how stopping exports helps people, but South Africa's vineyards are mostly situated in the Western Cape near the coast. And you can travel over the mountains into the hinterland, and that's where the rainfall decreases dramatically and you have more succulence, so a little more desert kind of conditions. So really along the coast. There are currently over 101,000 hectares in vines, which is 250,000 acres, producing wine grapes. And this is covering an area that's just under 500 miles in length. And most of the Cape's wine growing regions are influenced by two oceans. You have the Atlantic and you have the Indian Ocean, and they meet at the southernmost tip of Africa. And so I would say that most of the regions are along the coast. No wine region is more than 31 miles from the ocean. So we know that like New Zealand has most of their wineries near the sea, and we have a lot of coastal, but South Africa is definitely probably one of the winners when it comes to being near the ocean. So this combining of the maritime influence, like you have regular coastal fogs, you have a cool sea breeze, you have a moderate Mediterranean climate, you have this varied topography, diverse soils, and this is what creates the ideal conditions for unique wines. So you take this and then you take a sense of place and we're going to dive into what we have here. So again, just to explain, imagining, this is not my good map, but imagine, you know, South Africa is at the tip of Africa.
I've got a map for you, Allison.
Oh, good. Well,
I got you, girl.
thank you. Here you go. Thank you. This is useful. As you see, South Africa is on the tip of Africa. You have the two oceans, and then you have the mostly along the coast, as I had said. And then you have the Cape Mountain Range that form this dramatic backdrop to the beauty of this region. So the vineyards lie on the valley sides and the mountain foothills, and that adds to the different mesoclimates that you're going to get. So you have mountainous terrain and diverse terroirs. There's constant interaction between the rugged peaks and the multi-directional valley slopes and the proximity of these two mighty oceans. In particular, you have the Atlantic Ocean that's chilled by the icy Benguela current, flows northwards up the coast of Africa from Antarctica, and that moderates the summer warmth. That's cooling down the heat. And as I mentioned at the beginning, South Africa is widely recognized as the cradle of mankind, and even older are the soils of the Cape wine regions. So the soils are highly varied, and the three most important soils are derived from the Table Mountain sandstone, which is sandy and low nutrients and water retention properties, which are, let's see, I'm trying to see if the map, this is what you would find in, no, the map's not detailed enough. Okay, never mind. You have the soils that are derived from granite, and these are usually red to yellow colored. They're very acidic and found on the mountain foothill slopes and on ranges of hills with good physical and water retention properties. And then you have the soils that are derived from shale, and these are usually brownish. They're strongly structured. They're decomposed parent rock, good nutrients, and a lot of water retention. This one is a lot you'll find in Swartland, which we're going to go to today. I'm just not seeing it on the map, although I'm sure it's right in front of my face.
Allison, it's the larger,
yes.
lighter green.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So yes, so there we go. And then another good thing to know about South Africa is that they have a system called the wines of origin. And that's very similar to what we know as the AVA system or AOC DOP in Europe. The term wines of origin, or you'll see on a label WO, together with the name of a production area such as Stellenbosch, Durbanville, or Robertson will be on a label. And that confirms that 100% of the grapes from which that wine was made come from that area. So
can you point that out, Allison, on these labels?
I am looking for that. Yes. If you pick up your white wine and look right under the Badenhorst family wines, it says Swartlandis WO Steen, which I'll get into explaining all that. But that Swartlandis WO would be wine of origin Swartland. Swartland. Sorry, I don't speak Dutch. Or
you
Afrikaans.
Don't?
No. So if you see a wine like this one that we have, that is a Shannon Blanc that says wines of origin Stellenbosch or Swartland, you know a few things right away from this label. It's made from at least 85% Shannon Blanc, similar to the laws we have where it has to be 75% of grape to be called that grape on the label. Their rule is if it says WO, it has to be 85% of that grape, and every single grape has to come from that WO. Producers don't have to label their bottling, noting that they're a wine of origin, but if they don't, they're not allowed to put vintage, grape variety, or the region on the label. And maybe locally that is something that is beneficial, but I think for the export market, it is far more beneficial to use what you got. So there are 6 main regions in the geographical unit of Western Cape, which is what Gina had been showing us on that map. You have the Breed River Valley.
Do you want me to bring it back?
Yeah, go for it.
Go.
Okay, so you have the Breed River Valley, which you can see at the bottom below Cape Town. which includes Robertson, Breedalclough, in Worcester. You have the Cape South Coast, which includes Cape Agulhas, Overberg, Plettenberg Bay, Swellendam, and Walker Bay. Not that you're going to remember all of this, but just to give a sense of place. You have the coastal region, and the coastal region includes Cape Peninsula, Darling, Franschhoek, Parle, Stellenbosch, Swartland, Tulbach, Tyburg, Wellington, and Constantia. Probably the ones you're going to see most popular at all times if you find South African wines are Stellenbosch, Swartland, Constantia, if you're doing the sweet wine, and Darling. The coastal region is probably what you're going to see a lot of. And then there's the Klein Karoo and the Olifants River. There's also Boberg, and this is used for fortified wine only, and it's within wines from Parle. So we're going back to the coastal region. So there are 24 distinct, diverse districts within the coastal region that make up Boberg. And then there are 4 other geographical units. So wine is pretty much produced throughout the entire coast. So today we're heading to Swartland. Swartland is Dutch for black land, and it's named for the native rhinoceros bush that turns black after the rain. It's a large producing area with about 40 miles, that's located about 40 miles north of Cape Town in the Western Cape of South Africa. And it benefits from its proximity to Cape Town because, like Santa Barbara wine country or Napa and Sonoma, it benefits to have a big city near you. You've got Loudoun County for the Washingtonians. You got Temecula for San Diegans. That's exciting. I don't know. But it helps. And this is an area that was traditionally a wheat producing region. And now it specializes in making fruit-driven wines, particularly Shiraz, Shannon Blanc, and Pinotage. You have a variety of soils, and the climate is generally hot and dry. And the good thing about the dry region is that it reduces the risk of fungal disease. So another great thing that benefits. The lack of water makes those little berries suffer and struggle to get as strong as they can. And it also has forced them to use a lot of hardy drought-resistant bush vines. Soils we talked about already. We talked about that it's mostly shale, and there's also granite, very well draining. But I know you're all getting thirsty, so we're going to talk really quickly about some of the main grapes, and then we'll go into the first wine.
Allison, really quickly, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
In all of my research, they say bush vines instead of just vines. Is there a difference between bush vines and vines?
Yes, bush vines. If you've been to Lodi or Dry Creek or somewhere with old vines in
they're not as trained.
No, they're not trained at all. They
Okay.
look like hairy little heads that have grown up and have all their leaves coming out. And this you tend to get with a lot of old vine red wines. Zinfandel is on usually head trained bush vines. So that's instead of taking the trellises where you see all the wires, where they have the vine grow up and then it branches out this way and either go one way or have 2 levels, and then they'll prune along the way to control how many I can't even think of the words buds can grow out of the stems. Sorry, like my wonderful picture there. So in recent years, over 40% of the vineyards were replanted in South Africa. And so it has really helped South Africa realign itself to compete globally and moved from being a volume producer to a quality wine producer. The South African vineyards were once dominated by white grape varieties, and then red wines kind of took over that, not necessarily for the better. In the last 4 years, wine growers have started to go back to planting more whites than reds. So it's reversing a 10-year trend. And when it comes to varieties, for white wines, there's Chenin Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and then there's a range of reds. There's Shiraz, Pinot Noir, Bordeaux varieties, Rhone varieties, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese. They even have Zinfandel from California planted there. So even though most of the vine varieties cultivated here today were originally imported, they now have up to 6 local crossings that have been released. And we all know the most famous of those, which is Pinotage. And Pinotage is a cross between, does anyone know?
Pinot Noir and Cinsault.
You're not supposed to answer that.
Did I?
But yes,
sorry.
Pinot Noir and Cinsault make Pinotage. And there are very few things that South African wine is famous for, and one of them is Pinotage. The other one is Méthode Cap Classique, and that is their traditional sparkling wine. It is made under the name MCC, or Méthode Cap Classique. This was a term adopted in 1992 because they were no longer allowed to use the word champagne. They got banned from it. Like, producers get banned, but regions have agreed to not call their wines regions from other countries. So Champagne is a place in France. Port is a place in Portugal. California's making port and champagne is just disrespectful. We don't run around saying that, you know, I make Santa Barbara or I make Los Angeles something. You know, we really have to understand the grapes. So they make it in the champagne style, so secondary fermentation in the bottle, and they're produced in different regions throughout South Africa. And while champagne requires it to be Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier, South Africa is a lot more lax about what grapes are allowed to be blended in for their Méthode Cap Classique. But a great one to look out for is Graham Beck. I've written about them, tasted it, it's quite delicious. Another wine that they're known for is what I mentioned at the very beginning, which is the sweet wine Constancia. Vin de Constancia is a historical wine, and it really is South Africa's most iconic wine. It's made from Muscat Blanc, a Petit Grand, and it's a rival to Yquem. So again, it was great for the Brits to drink this until their war with France ended, and then they went back to drinking Sauterne. It also rivals Tokaj, which hopefully you'll all taste with us for Hungary, and Madeira in Europe, which is a personal favorite of mine. And really it really rivaled all of those and dominated the market until the 18th, 19th centuries. Klein Constancia is the oldest producer. It was reinvested, this whole area, this whole wine was reinvested in the 1980s, and it makes this beautiful, like, rich nose of citrus and apricot and ginger, and just delicious wine. And then there is the white wine that is South Africa, and that is their signature white grape, the most important white wine grape of the Swartland region, and that is Chenin Blanc. So Chenin Blanc, yes, it is originally from the Loire Valley in France, but it was brought to South Africa in the 1600s, and it was known as Steen, which you can see on the label, S-T-E-E-N. It is the most widely cultivated grape in the entire Cape, and it's the most popular white grape in the country. It's been the fastest growing South African grape variety and is up something like 35% in the US market over the last 5 years. So hopefully if you haven't tasted already, you're gonna see like why it's growing. As I said, it's originally from the Loire Valley, but Chenin Blanc makes up 18% of the plantings in South Africa. And interestingly enough, because you can buy some in California and other places, Chenin Blanc has the most plantings of Chenin Blanc outside of France. In fact, there are more plantings of Chenin Blanc in South Africa than the rest of the world combined, if you exclude France. So this is really their baby. It's a beautifully versatile wine grape. It can be made sparkling, still, dry, sweet. It's known as a vigorous grape, so it can make really high yields. So for years, they added this to bulk wines. It added acidity to these bulk wines, or they used it as a base for brandy. And they would also sell it. Do you remember when we used to drink jugs of Chablis and things like that? Or when your parents bought jugs of Chablis? Well, this was put into a blend with Claret Blanche and sold in really large bottles. It was once the best-selling wine in the world, but again, that's probably like what my mom was buying in the 70s. So if you're a fan of Sauvignon Blanc and a fan of Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc is that perfect wine that fits right in between there. And I'm going to turn this over to Gina to talk a little bit about this wonderful producer.
Yeah. So if anyone didn't see in the chat, I really love Chenin Blanc. This is like, it's not new to anyone that knows me that Chenin Blanc, I don't blame you if none of you take me seriously anymore, but I call it Chenin because it's my favorite and one of my favorites. I can't pick a favorite, but like Allison said, you're like, and we're never coming again. It's the perfect balance between Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. You can do it oaked, you can do it unoaked, you can put it in crazy large foudres, you can put it in concrete. It's such a great grape because it's so versatile, like Allison was saying, that you could literally do whatever you wanted to it if you wanted. I'm going to get to the winery in a minute, but just sticking on this Chenin Blanc, one of the cool things that the winemaker for Badenhorst Family Wines does is he basically does nothing. So this specific Chenin that we're going to dive into it's a really great representation of what the grape itself tastes like, because he doesn't choose to age it in any oak. I mean, there's maybe a touch on a very large foudre, but you're not getting a lot of oak influence from crazy large neutral foudre barrels. It's mostly concrete, and I'm just very excited about this wine. This has been like, I've been drum rolling here now for the last month and a half with these tastings. This is like my happy place. So anyways, if you all want to join me on calling it Chenin for the rest of your lives, I will not blame you. But then also before we go on, I did find a really great chart that had some grapevine training. So I'm going to share this with you just so everyone can see. Here we go. So these grapevines can you see my mouse if I go like this? You can. Okay, perfect. So this is the standard, that's what we use mostly here in our grapevine training. Spur is very similar. With these, they really drop a lot of the clusters. So it's a really highly focused flavor within, there's like it's like one cluster per cane, and canes come out of these, they're like 5 canes per cordon, which the cordon is the little branch. And then
that's the word I was trying to think of before.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I knew people like needed some context, and I was like, I'll find it. And if anyone doesn't know what Wine Folly is, it's such an amazing resource. It's where I just got one of their newer books. I'm so excited. Anyway, so if you go all the way down to the bottom, they're calling this goblet or head training, but it's very similar to what bush vine training is, where it's this bottom middle one. If you're not seeing my mouse, and it's literally like a little hand. And they each have their own goal in mind for what they want the grapes to do. This really crazy, it's called like a basket. I think
I've seen that you can find, that's how a Certico in Greece on Santorini, on the island of Santorini, how it's grown. And the reason is it's very cool. And if you want, for the very end, I can find one of the photos when I was there, because it is like a basket, and when you lift it up, you can see the grapes that are growing. It's for wind. It's to protect against wind, and it's pretty cool. And bush vines also the same thing. It really works for the climate and condition. And there are some great images from Lodi. If you look up from Old Vine Zin or old vines of Lodi, because they have Cinsault and other, you can see how gorgeous these head trained vines are.
Yeah, they look very
They look like little monsters that want to come out and eat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyways, I thought that was really interesting to share with you guys, because we all have in mind this like classic beautiful like two branched thing, and it depends on where in the world you are, you're going to get a different shape, and they, like I said, they each have their own kind of specific purpose. But anyways, so this Shannon Blanc, I'm not going to call it Chenin anymore because you guys are going to leave. This Shannon Blanc is from Badenhorst family wines. They do a couple of different tiers. This is their Secateurs wines, and Badenhorst family wines, they are grown and made on the, sorry for the pronunciation, Calmos Fontaine farm. It is what it is, which is located in the Swartland AVA in South Africa, of course. It's owned and operated by cousins Hein and Audi Badenhorst. And just a side note, on their website, they keep, before they say cousins Hein and Audi Badenhorst, they say good looking cousins. They say it like 5 times. Like we get it, they're handsome. But anyways, that really, I know, are they? Anyways, I encourage y'all to go look it up. But anyway, I just thought that was funny. They kept saying like they really want you to know that they're good looking. Anyways, Addie, who's the winemaker, made his very first vintage when he was 13, which cracks me up because I was not making wine when I was 13. I was like picking my nose and climbing trees. But so he grew up a little bit more. He completed his studies at Ellensburg, and then did a couple of harvests in the Northern Rhone in France, and then in New Zealand as well. And then in 2008, he came back and started his winery with his cousin Hein, and started Badenhorst family wines. They're both originally from Constantia, which where their grandfather farmed for 46 years. He was the farm manager of Groot Constantia, which is also where both of their fathers were born, and they also farmed together. Excuse me. So this is a multi-generational farming family that has been in and around vines forever, which is so amazing. Today, their winery is in a restored cellar on the farm that was last used in 1930. And they farm biologically, I'll get into that in a second, and make as natural wines as possible in the traditional manner. Excuse me. So, biological farming is another one of those terms that there's a specific certification that exists in a number of countries. It doesn't necessarily exist in the States, but it is popular in South Africa, and it originated in Australia by an Australian farmer named Gary Zimmer in the 1980s. And it's similar to organic farming. It's similar to biodynamic farming. You guys have probably heard us say those terms before in these. Those are certifications that exist in the United States. And of course, every country does their own thing, which I wish we could just get on the same page because it would make things a lot easier. But anyways, in the 1980s, Gary Zimmer developed this biological farming method in reaction to conventional farming, which everyone has their own opinion, but he believed that conventional farming completely decimates farmland. And biological farming has the goal of creating a very well-balanced soil environment. That means you're seeing all these happy little worms squiggling in and around. There's all of the proper nitrates and phosphates and all of those things that you need in a proper soil environment. And you do a lot of things like introduce farm animals, their poop acts as fertilizers and all the good stuff that you would think most farms do, but not all do. So similarly to organic farming, the idea is to farm with the environment, not against it. But unsimilar or unlike organic farming, they can use certain chemical fertilizers. Is that him?
That's him.
Is that Addie or?
Yeah, That's
that's our winemaker, our good looking cousin winemaker. He's not my type, but that's okay if you guys like him.
I added a photo of him to the chat with some very bold facial hair,
Yes.
so everyone can tell.
Amazing. Thank you, Laura. That's fantastic. Yeah, so just unlike organic farming, biological farming does use certain chemical fertilizers and pesticides. And this is where I think it's a little odd with certain, let me find the right, certain production goals in mind. So I don't know what that means exactly. Maybe if you want to like make a certain amount and you just know that you can't get there unless you use a little bit of fertilizer, that's fine. But it seems there's a little gray area, but the goal in mind is to be as environmentally friendly as possible, which I love. And the soil is the heart of the true kind of definition of biological farming, which makes sense because that's exactly where everything's growing out of. So you might as well focus on the thing that everyone starts in, and then ideally everything from there comes beautifully and happily. Most of the vines, I think Allison, you mentioned this, most of the vines on the Calmos Fontaine farm were planted in the 50s and 60s. Mostly are Shannon Blanc, Cinsault, and Grenache. They do source from other similarly farmed or biologically farmed vineyards as well if they need to make a specific blend. Like for instance, there's a little bit of Shiraz in the red blend that we're going to be tasting. But their goal is to always be as sustainable as possible. And then finally, just all of the fruit, red and white, is whole bunch handled. So there's no crushing or destemming, which means that they're all just kind of plopped in a vat. And that adds a nice amount of body to the wines, gives you kind of a little, some people call it stemminess, but that seems to have like a negative connotation to it, but it just adds a really nice kind of full complexity to the wine, which I really appreciate. And yeah, Mike, do you want to talk about the Chenin?
Yeah, I've been sipping it. It's the nose is a little shy. I think it has kind of not as much tropical fruit as I thought it would have. It does kind of have a little bit of apple. It doesn't have kind of the mushy bruised apple that you tend to come across in Loire Valley, but maybe a little bit tartar on the tartar sort of crab apple side of it. And then it has kind of some minerality in there, right? Kind of that hard to describe wet stone thing. Has a little bit of that flintiness that I saw mentioned a couple places on the web, which you might think of like a struck match or something like that. A little bit of that on the nose. Definitely not a super fruit forward nose in my mind. What do you guys think?
I agree. Yeah.
It's kind of old world on the nose. If I had to guess, I would not have guessed South Africa. I would have thought this wine was probably from France. On the palate, it's also not super fruit forward, right?
Yeah, I think the acid is a really nice balance to those fruit notes.
It's very leesy. This spent a lot of time on the lees in concrete, fermenting for a long time. I think they said it spent 12 days just fermenting in tanks. So I think it has that leesy quality, amazing mouthfeel, right? Really reminds me of a good Chardonnay on the mouth, just that mouthfeel, that texture. It's very almost creamy, right? Like yogurt or something. I think it's hard to stop sipping this wine. But I'm curious how other people take this wine. What do you think? Because it's kind of different. It's not at all like the Sauvignon Blanc we had from New Zealand, right?
Yeah, it's got a nice body to it. Mike or Allison, just in case anyone doesn't know, do you want to explain what the lees are and aging sur lie?
They are the yeasts. So you take grapes and you add yeast, and the yeast eats the sugar of the grapes, turning that sugar into alcohol with CO2 as a byproduct. And then when the lees are finished eating the sugar, they die and they stay in the tank. And so you let those stay in the barrel or in the tank. And if you stir the wine, or if you're in a rounded barrel where it's moving on its own kind of and has the soft edges, that sort of integrates into adding to the mouthfeel of a wine. It's not necessarily changing flavor by any way. The wine is fully fermented, the yeasts are done with their job, but they're adding that kind of that lovely textural feeling that we're getting kind of in the mid palate where it sits on the tongue and everything. But I think the wine has some lovely citrus notes, pineapple. I think it has a lot of great acidity. I think some of those, the citrus kind of follows the way through. And then the minerality, like this kind of cold stone, wet stone thing. I was trying to find it and I'm having a little difficulty right now, but I will link it. I host a podcast where I interview winemakers, and it's Get to Know a Winemaker in 30 Questions. Some are funny, some are personal, some are about them as winemakers, as wine drinkers. I interviewed Audi Badenhorst. There were a bunch of South African winemakers in town. I did it at Republique in Los Angeles, where we went into the wine cellar and the wine and the air vent would click on and off as we were doing this. And we ended up
which is why we don't shoot videos on location, right?
But we ended up going downstairs into the office so that nobody could come and bother us. And he and I were standing up against two up against walls as I was interviewing for the podcast.
This is sounding like it's getting a little risque. We understand handsome.
He was the only person I had to email Claudio in Italy afterwards, who runs the podcast, and say, I don't know if you need to put an R rating on this one, because and please, if your kids are in the room, plug their ears. Every other word in the interview, he said, fuck. He'd be like, well, the fucking grapes, and I love the fucking Shannon Blanc because when I'm fucking harvesting, and I was like, I don't think we can edit all of this out.
That's amazing.
He's a really nice guy, but yeah, his vernacular is part of his. Some people a lot. He says fuck a lot. So
he's very passionate.
So back to this, we should talk about food pairings. I saw an interesting food pairing on Wine Folly, actually. They were saying this is a great wine to pair with turkey on Thanksgiving.
I saw that,
which I thought was interesting. I was thinking more Southeast Asian type food, spicy, could pair well with this. Good alternative to, Riesling. So maybe Szechuan or Thai, this would go really well. Actually, it might go really well with Vietnamese, kind of that, like those colder dishes. I could see where the roundness on the palate could pair well with sort of the attack of the heat and the sort of the different herbs and stuff. And I think this pairs, if you want to do kind of a light pairing, this could pair well with like brie, just in terms of creamy on creamy. If you want kind of that overwhelming, if you want to do a pairing that's not counter but similar. I wonder if anybody else has any pairings.
Yeah, I would say we were eating Whole Foods truffle mac and cheese bites, like from the freezer section, which are excellent. But I feel like the creaminess of the mac and cheese and then just the funkiness of the truffle. At first I was worried that it was going to really, because those probably would have been horrible with Sauv Blanc. And I feel like they went pretty well with this because of the mouthfeel, like because this had like more heft to it.
Yeah, you want to have a combination of the acidity will kind of cut through, and then the mouthfeel will match and not overpower or get lost. And to Kathy, I would say that, definitely a little white pepper. I'm not getting into warm spices as much, but I think I could go, I can follow you down that path in what you're saying there. I think the white pepper, kind of with the minerality, all of that, kind of goes into that, I don't want to say herbal, but going into that category away from fruit. So I'm with you on that.
I think that, so I did refrigerate it, and it's now been out of the fridge for, we've all been sitting here for an hour, but about an hour and a half. And as it's warming, I do actually get some more of those like cozy kind of spiciness. Like it's like almost as if there's like a zucchini bread baking in the oven, like 2 rooms away kind of a feel where, yeah. So I agree, Kathy. I agree.
And Chenin Blanc is such a wonderful grape. It is one of those that also ages really well, and changes so much the way it rounds out. Like we had talked about Acertico in Greece, and we talked about Encruzado when we tried that. Chenin Blanc is another one of those that is just, it's so good when it's young, and it's so good when it's aged.
I mean, an aged Sauvigneurs, the Sauvigneurs region in Loire Valley, those things aged. I've had ones that were 20, 30 years old, and they can be phenomenal. And that's where you get that really distinct bruised red apple smell. It smells like apples that have fallen from the tree and are just starting to rot. And that sounds weird, but it's so distinct on the wine. And when you smell it and you taste it, it's just phenomenally complex and interesting white wine. And they're readily available, aged like that. You'll come across them all the time. I think that if anybody does like this wine, they really should go explore the Loire Valley Chenin Blanc. The Saumur region is incredible. Sauvigneurs and Vouvray, of course. There's a few others as well, but Loire Valley.
I have a
Chenin
couple
Blanc.
some more Chenins in my online shop that I will link as well, because
Oh, there you go.
yeah,
Some more can be incredible. Yeah.
I should
All right.
really start like a whole Chenin thing.
Yes. I think we should do a tasting of just like 5 Loire Valley Chenin Blancs.
Oh, Mike.
Who's up for that?
Yes, double hands. Let's not to just to keep everyone's time in mind, let's move to the red.
Yes.
Just because it's 7 already. How did that happen?
Yeah, I promise I don't have as much to say, but just getting into red wines as we move in, I mentioned to you that they kind of run the gamut on red grapes of what they grow in South Africa. But really, the most important grape grown in the Swartland, where we are, is Shiraz, like in Australia. And it's often blended with Grenache and Mourvedre so that they're creating a Southern Rhone blend. We are kind of doing our own. They've done their own sort of. We have a, this wine, a Cinsault with a Shiraz and Grenache. So just a little bit about these grapes. Cinsault used to be called Hermitage, or that's what another name that it was called. And it's a strong bearer as a grape. It's a very versatile variety. It can be blended with Cabernet to make easy drinking wines, or as a quality wine for brandy distillation. So again, like Chenin, poor little Cinsault was just thrown into the brandy to add all of its wonderful value. It's also used often for rosé, for port style wines. It's pretty diverse. And it was once South Africa's most widely planted red variety. It's decreased as more known noble grapes, have been planted. And I want to point one thing out, that I have a bottle. Yes. Okay, I have a bottle. I just thought of this. I have a bottle of Lodi Old Vine Cinsault. And I have a bottle of the New World. Well, I want to see if you can notice anything. Wait, sorry. Tell me what you see. Anyone notice?
It's missing the L.
It's missing the L. They're not allowed to use it in the US.
What?
That's like a champagne designation, right?
This is how it is spelled in France and in South Africa, but they're not supposed to use the L in America. So, little FYI, if you see Cinsault, it is Cinsault with the L, same thing. Anyway, the other grapes in here are Grenache, which is, as we talked about before, one of Spain's most important varieties, known as Garnacha. This is a really hardy grape. It's resistant to drought, and it's typically blended with Merlot or Cabernet and Shiraz. And then there's Shiraz. They say Shiraz, Syrah. We have the Hydrox wine. this is the largest production of Syrah. They say it, they're using Syrah and Shiraz sort of interchangeably. We do know that they are different clones at this point. But the largest production is in Australia, but it's really starting to grow in South Africa. And they also make very different styles here. Shiraz tends to be a deep purple, smoky, and spicy with a lot of complexity with age. So those are the 3 grapes that go into this, and I will go back to Gina on that.
Yeah, I've literally have like 2 sentences because we're in the same winery. I'm not going to repeat everything. But right at the end of where I was talking, I mentioned that all the fruit, red and white, is whole, bunch handled, and there's no crushing or destemming, specifically breaking down kind of the distinction with how they make the reds and the whites. The whites are transferred directly to old casks or concrete tanks for fermentation and aging. And then the red grapes, which of course is what we're drinking, are fermented in concrete tanks and open wood coupes. I don't know what that is. That's bad homework on my part. I will include what a coupe, Kuipe. I will include that in my...
a K. It means it's a Dutch word.
Yeah, I will include the definition in my
Yeah.
follow-up email to everyone, I promise. So I will not leave you hanging on that. But anyways, so, and then post-fermentation, they age the wines the fermentation can take about 4 months. And then after that, they're put into large casks or 4,000 liter foudres. And I've said foudre now a couple of times. It's Foudre. And I'm sure almost everyone has probably seen those like massive barrels where like someone's standing in front of it and it's like the size of like a little castle. That's a foudre. And just to give you an idea, those are made of oak, but the larger the vessel, there is less wine. I'm sorry, there's more wine to oak ratio. So you're really not getting a ton of flavor coming off of that. The point of a foudre is literally just for it to exist in a tank that isn't stainless steel or concrete. Foudres are used a lot in natural winemaking because it doesn't really, there's no flavor coming off of it. The goal is to taste what the actual grape tastes like. So that's what they're using for their red wines. And then finally, there are no additions done to the grapes other than just a slight touch of sulfur before and after fermentation during the bottling process. And that's
I was reading on this wine, they foot stomped it twice a day for 2 weeks. I think it's for 2 weeks. And then it's been 7 months again on the gross lees, so on the dead lees, as Allison was mentioning, and lightly filtered. But yeah, pretty simple winemaking technique, right? And in big concrete and similar to the other old casks and Fords, like you said. It's very spicy, has a lot of black pepper. This wine is interesting because it smells the way it tastes. They're very similar. Sometimes you'll have wines that there's no connect between how it smells and how it tastes. This wine actually has very similar notes for me on the nose and on the palate. It has blueberry, pomegranate, sort of brambly fruit, and then kind of a spicy sort of black pepper thing overall. I do get kind of a meatiness that usually I'm used to experiencing in straight up Syrah, maybe Syrah from the old. It has kind of a cured meat thing sort of going on for me, which I like, and a very sort of, to me, savory palate, and almost like kind of a classic black tea tannin. But definitely approachable right now. Some people I think might call the palate crunchy, has kind of crunchy tannins, if that makes any sense. As far as pairings, I was reading the classic pairing is escargot, which makes no sense to me. I don't know where that came from. And I love escargot, and I'm having trouble imagining drinking this with escargot. That seems strange. To me, it wants some sort of beef stew, something like that. Bourguignon, something like that. I wonder, is anybody pairing tonight? Is anybody eating while they drink this? Or are we all just drinking, double fisting, and just no food?
I feel like escargot is so garlicky, and maybe that's just the like one thing of escargot that I've had. But like, if anything, like the Chenin would be better, in my opinion. Chenin might be better,
right,
with escargot than the Cinsault, but
yeah.
clearly
Wine Folly says that escargot is the classic pairing. It's just, I think it might just be a strange tradition or something. Allison, any thoughts on that?
I'm not sure that I can follow the escargot quite, but I don't eat a lot of escargot. So,
I did see that though, Mike. I did see that as I was kind of sending out my email, and I was like, I'm not going to put that in there. That seems wrong.
Yeah, sounds wrong.
Yeah. Wouldn't you say, or wouldn't you guys say this? I don't know. This tastes really different to me than like a California Cinsault. I feel like most of the California Cinsauts I taste are also from more people who are doing more of like a, not necessarily carbonic, but more of like a
fruit
natural
forward, yeah.
Well, hold on one second. Mike, did you talk about what the percentages are? Because it's not 85% Cinsault.
Well, it has to be at least 75%, right?
85 to be called Cinsault. But this one has the other two on the label. Sorry, I keep picking up the one. So I don't know what the percentages are, but I would definitely say.
Oh, yeah. 10% Shiraz, 10%
Shiraz,
Shiraz, and 8% Grenache, and 82% Cinsault. So those are significant amounts of those grapes. But even still, I don't know.
Well, Syrah can give body to a wine, and it can give that kind of backbone and muscle. So it doesn't take a lot for it to shift. And again, Cinsault, every place that it's grown is going to be different. So south of France is different than California, everything given. The Cinsault that I had showed you back here, a Lodi one, is a pretty big style Cinsault relative. It's a 110-year-old vine, and it's not a natural wine. It's not like the Two Shepherds Cinsault. Which is probably what you're thinking of.
Oh, their Cinsault is so good.
My gosh.
I could drink Two Shepherds all day. I want to just keep in mind everyone's time. I want to do two things, and then we can get into kind of like Freeland, where we just talk about anything and everything. I would really love to do a cheers with everyone. I know this is so cheesy, but it makes me happy, and I hope it makes you guys happy too. So if you don't mind, can we do a cheers? And I'm going to screenshot it. So put your smiley faces on, your beautiful smiley faces. Okay, I will do a countdown. 1, 2, cheers. Yay, thank you for entertaining me with that. And then again, always, if anyone has any questions, we're here until you don't want us to be. So I'm not kicking anyone off by any means. I just wanted to make sure that we did that.
I think we passed that point like 45 minutes ago.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, also, I wanted to hear Maurice's South African stories. So if you can, if you still want to, if you're interested, I'd love to hear how your trip to South Africa was.
Oh man. So this was in 2009. They're not like crazy stories, but like one.
They're a little crazy.
Yeah, I'll end with swine flu and start with the rhino. So we, my dad's an infectious disease doctor. We went out there for a medical conference as a family, 2009. So we went to Cape Town, Durban, Joburg, and spots. We did a little bit of safari in, I think, KwaZulu-Natal. Yeah, I don't know, like we were out on safari, like there was a black rhino in the area. Our guide was like, oh yeah, come on down, we can
aren't those extinct now?
It was some kind of rhino. Maybe
no, like now, like recently.
Oh,
you
really?
might have seen the last one.
That's horrible.
That's really depressing.
Yeah.
God, the world is changing fast. So yeah, I don't know. My mom, like our guide was like, when you get out, like, do not move. You just stand still. If anything happens, you just stand still. And like, she had this like big old like gun slung over her shoulder. And the black rhino like comes around the side, and then my mom starts like moving to the side, and the guide is just like looks over her and is like, absolutely not, like, do not move, like, stay put. It was a very scary moment.
Wait, and then didn't you start running?
Yeah, she started like moving and like running back, and he was like, no, stop. I don't know if that's like fully a story, but whatever.
Aren't rhinoceroses or rhinoceri, whatever the plural of that word is, aren't they like the most deadly land animals? And people would never, or am I thinking of hippopotamus?
Hippos,
are really
which are also fantastic.
They will kill you.
They'll eat you.
But they're really cute up until the moment they like murder you.
Yeah, their little ears.
It's like, thank you, hippo. I'm dead now.
If Disneyland taught me anything, it's that you don't want to see their ears. Or no, is that hippos or rhinos?
I think it's hippos in the Jungle Cruise, right?
Yeah, you don't want to see their ears wiggle because they're going to kill you on the Jungle Cruise.
Is that what Disneyland taught you?
Disneyland is a small world after all.
That is what Disneyland taught me.
I wanted to let you guys know, because there was a question when I said the Cinsault with the L and it's not legal here. And I had Googled it, and a winery had written how they got approval to do it once because they had already printed their labels. And that was 25 years ago. And ever since then. So I quickly texted William Allen of Two Shepherds, because both Ryan and Melanie and Jerry had texted me going, well, he spells it with an L. And here's what he said to me. I said, hey, how can you put Cinsault on your label versus without the L? And he goes, nope, I refuse to. However, that's what the TV, the government requires. So we send them one version and we print another one.
Oh, damn.
Anarchy.
That's amazing.
So
my last,
yeah, go ahead, Maurice.
Story is, so traveling there, took a very long flight. I was like boating beforehand, and I ended up coming down with a 104 or 105 fever in Durban. Luckily, I was at a medical conference. It was a small one, but my dad was like, Maurice, you're an idiot, and either you have the swine flu or you have a deadly brain virus, and you're gonna die very soon. And I was like, thank you, Dad. That's not at all what I wanted to hear. Because this was, during the time of swine flu. And it was pretty bad fever. It was like,
he got swine flu in South Africa.
Yeah. So I got swine flu somehow. Lo and behold, we're in a pandemic like later, but went to the lab, like ran some special tests, checked like white blood cell count and who knows what. But then like my fever came down, and like I immediately hopped on an airplane, like no masks, like nothing.
Good old days.
Good old days. That was just the swine flu.
This reflects the difference in
Mr.
our
Cuddles
times.
doesn't like that story.
That was just the swine flu.
Yeah.
Mere swine flu.
That's awesome.
So anyway.
That's South Africa.
Thank you for Story Corner, Maurice. That was fantastic. Clearly we all need to go here and drink the good wine.
Mr. Cuddles. Sorry, he's in a mood. I'm gonna mute now.
Not so cuddly is Mr. Cuddles.
No, he's in a pissy mood and we don't know why.
That's amazing. So I'm curious, has anyone and by show of hands, I'll rephrase this so it's easier to answer. Who has had Shannon Blanc? So this is not new to anyone.
Wait, do you mean like before tonight? You could say before today.
Yeah, I'm sorry, before tonight. Okay, and then who has not had Cinsault before tonight? Awesome. Okay, cool. We brought some of you guys some new wines. I love that. Does anyone have questions, comments, favorites? Is there something you didn't like? Because that's always welcome in these too. Like we don't expect you guys to like everything we bring you. We just want to show you something cool.
So I have a question that I think was referenced on the last call that we need to support South African wines because of the regulations. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead, Allison.
The challenge with South Africa is that we were excited to be supporting them by doing this tasting and what you guys were doing because they had stopped all exports. And that meant that the importers that were bringing them in couldn't, I mean, no one was able to sell South African wine that wasn't already in the US because the ban had been put on. But I believe it's been lifted. I think I read that the other day. And it all has to do with COVID. The government has twice blocked them from anything leaving their country. And again, I understand maybe not selling within the country. I'm not really sure the reason why you can't put it on a boat to the US, but that's what South Africa did. So we're happy to support them tonight with these wines, and hopefully you like them, and we'll look out for more South African wines. They have been, as a country, they have been steadily growing over the last 5-10 years in the US in terms of wine purchases. And they're making great wines. And now that you know Shannon Blanc, you can buy Loire Valley or you can buy South Africa.
Kathy says, we might have missed this, but are there big differences between French Chenin, which I love? Thank you, Kathy. And the one we had tonight?
The short answer is, yeah, kind of. Although this one is kind of showing its old world stuff. I mean, this does not taste like a California Chenin Blanc. We agreed, but French Chenin Blanc kind of has a wide array. I mean, there's some that are fresher and I wouldn't say lighter, but fresher and meant to be drunk young. And there's some that are almost made to be drunk young, but also can potentially be aged, like we were talking about. Allison or Gina, you've had some Chenin Blanc.
I mean, well, Chenin Blanc, the fruit notes can be yellow apple, quince, pear, as Mike had said, baked apple, bruised apple. You can get into fruits like honeydew and melon, and you can get lemon verbena and all that stuff.
But do you think French Chenin Blanc tends to be different than the one we're having tonight? Hard to say, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, logically, think about the places. Loire Valley is cooler, so ripeness can be uneven. It can be, I think, can be highly acidic. The riper ones are for off-dry styles. I think that, you're talking about different climates, and that's really what it's doing. It's picking, I mean, they're growing in different soils, but they're ultimately picking up climates that are different. South Africa, coastal, Loire Valley has bodies of water, but no oceans. Can get hotter days, but also that nice Mediterranean climate versus a more continental climate of Loire Valley, the colder. So I think it's a level of ripeness, and ripeness will also dictate level of fruitiness and what fruits you get. So the best thing to do is to buy them both and just enjoy and see. There's a time and a place for all of them.
We can
I
make
think the
that
three
happen.
of us can safely recommend going out and buying and drinking Loire Valley Chenin Blanc.
Yes, I have one or two Chenin Blancs from Nicolas Joly, who's the grandfather of biodynamic farming. And I mean, these are wines that will age forever.
And they're absolutely spectacular. I've had probably 3 or 4 of them, and they're not completely outrageously priced either. You can get into one for like 50, 60, 70 bucks, depending on where you buy it. But you see that name, Joly, buy it, drink it.
Anything else?
I have a, she said, is there anything we disliked? I didn't like when Allison said Temecula and then said San Diego, because Temecula is not in San Diego. It's in Riverside County.
It's for the people of San Diego.
No, it is not. It is for the people of, I have no fucking
Orange
clue.
County. Okay, the people of Orange County.
That's who it's for. There you go.
Oh my God.
Well deserved. Orange County.
San Diego County has an amazing wine culture with fantastic wineries making amazingly good wine. Some making not so good wine, but many making very good wine. And so San Diego County does not.
Northern San Diego County has a lot of vineyards planted, and there are some good wines coming out of there.
And even southern up, if you find, yeah, I mean, there's tons of wineries to the east of San Diego, and Temecula is not one of them. Temecula is Riverside County in a totally different microclimate, totally different thing going on. San Diego County is a terrific climate for wine.
To go to San Diego.
No, not if you live in San Diego.
I do when I go to Fallbrook. I drive through it.
I grew up in San Diego, and I have never been to Temecula. Not on purpose. It just never happened. If you like sweet almond wine, apparently that's their jam, among other things.
Their jam is jammy, overpriced, scary stuff. In general, I'm sure there's probably somebody out there making great wine, but I haven't had it yet. However, San Diego, there are a lot of people making very good wine, and it's a thing. It's actually a really good climate for wine. It's a fun place to go wine taste too. And yeah, I highly recommend. I mean, Fallbrook, just near Fallbrook, within 5 miles of there's multiple good wineries. So
that sounds. I have friends who have a flower farm. They call it a flower farm in near Fallbrook, but really what they grow is all the greens that go into like your flower bunch. So they don't grow the actual flowers.
That's cool.
Cool.
I will say my parents recently moved to Temecula.
Which Lizzie and Brian are now concerned about.
Which they're like, oh no, are they okay? They're members of all wineries like in San Ynez and Paso and up, we have not been super impressed when we have gone to winery. They did not move there for the wine. They just job. And cheaper housing, much cheaper housing. But do you think like it seems to us that it's not necessarily the region as much as it's like the clientele they're marketing to, because it's a certain audience that's driving there, that they live close there, and they will pay for overpriced wine, and they just want to like be in front of really expensive, gaudy wineries?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is. It's just I don't know if they can make good wine there or not. I have no idea. I would assume not. The climate's very hot, but I mean, it's hot in Temecula.
Yeah, but I mean, Paso.
No, I agree.
Before Kathy goes, because she has to sign off, she had a really good idea, which we've kind of talked about, because we had talked about maybe doing a blind tasting down the line to practice that. But based on what we were talking about, Gina, Kathy was suggesting maybe we do the same, like maybe do 3 or 4 wines, same grape from different countries.
Ooh, I love that idea.
We could do Shannon Blanc.
More Chenin in one night. I'm just saying.
What was that, Kathy?
More Chenin in one night.
You should include a Shannon Blanc from Temecula, because then it will be hilarious when we all agree this is so good.
Hey, I don't think they grow Shannon Blanc in Temecula.
They grow everything in Temecula.
We East Coasters don't understand where Temecula is.
Okay,
I have a general sense.
For you East Coasters, for you Washingtonians, Temecula is a step down from Loudoun County.
No, I'm familiar.
It's next to Orange County, and Orange County people drive there for overpriced wine.
Hey,
right, but the thing is, like,
because my bachelorette party was there, and I don't remember any of it.
Exactly, it's a bachelorette party place. No, but the thing is that Loudoun County is the closest wine region to Washington, D.C. It is not the ideal place to be planting vineyards. It's better like in the Blue Ridge Mountains. There are some good wines in the Maryland and Virginia area, but Loudoun County is probably not that place. However, it's 40 minutes from DC, which means that it's a great day trip for Washingtonians. And Temecula, I think the wines are maybe, I'm giving Loudoun a leg up to Temecula.
But in terms of geography, I didn't realize till Mike said that Temecula is really Riverside County, because I go through it to go to San Diego. So I come from Glendale, which is like Pasadena. So that's sort of northeast of downtown Los Angeles. And a lot of people in California, if they're going to San Diego, they go over to the 5 freeway, which runs down sort of basically down by the coast. But from where I am, or Pasadena, you can go down.
You're inland.
Inland on the east side, and you go down these other highways.
The 15.
But Marcy Joe, what's
you go down the 15.
If you go north of where you live, staying in LA County, north of where you live, there are vineyards there.
Yeah. So Temecula is sort of inland, and then you scoot down to San Diego, but on the inland side, not on the coast side.
I was contacted. In normal days, I work with wine regions and organize trade events around the US for people in the industry. And I was contacted a number of years ago by the Temecula Wine Association asking me to do a trade event for them. And I never say no because, you know, I'm a project-based person. You can't say no to work because you don't know when the next one is. I said no to them. I was like, there's no way that I can get the industry of any merit to show up to a tasting of Temecula wines. I am not knocking it. There are a couple good wines there. Matt Kettman, who writes for Wine Enthusiast, wrote a glowing story a couple years ago about Temecula. And then suddenly my mom's like, you really shouldn't poo-poo it until you go there. But yes, I could not in good faith expect to have any quality sommelier be willing with an open mind to come to a Temecula tasting.
Yeah, because I feel like they're really trying to build it up. As we have friends for a couple of years, like, yeah, we're going, wine tasting, Southern California wine region, like, and everyone thinks like everyone knows, Paso and Sonoma and Napa, and they're like, oh, we have that here in our backyard. No,
We do, Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara, and they're like, we can go the other way, yeah. Bye, Kathy.
And I'm telling you,
like
San Diego.
Southern California, yeah.
But for
Southern
you
California.
people, we do have not just Malibu, but there is a tasting room for Angelino Wine Company, which is an LA-based winery in
Los
downtown
Angeles.
LA.
It's been around since what, 18 something or other.
Well, the Angelino Wine Company are two young people who started it, but oh no, I'm not talking about
I forget what it's called, but yeah.
People who bring in Stella Rosa.
Yeah.
San Antonio wine.
San Antonio,
that's what I thought of. Yeah, San
No,
Antonio.
no, know what you're talking about, right? I can't think of the name.
Yeah, no, not San Antonio, but if you go, it's north of Chinatown. There is a tasting room for Angelino Wine Company. It's two friends, youngish people. And then Brian Blatty is another. They don't actually have Brian doesn't have a physical place to go, but these are people sourcing from the Agua Dulce area, which is for the Southern California people down here. I forgot that's part of LA County. I mean, that's
Palm Springs, basically, right?
No, further north, like
Lancaster.
Valencia, but like
Lancaster, High Desert.
And no, it's definitely not by Palm Springs. It's by us up in Santa Clarita. You just go out to 14. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in Antelope Valley.
There's a fantastic, when COVID is over, there's a fantastic French restaurant called Le Chêne. Everyone write it down, Le Chêne. He grows grapes in his backyard, the guy who owns it. And so it's out there and then further. It's if anyone has seen the poppies.
Yeah.
Agua Dulce.
Yeah. If you've gone and seen the poppies, then you've basically been where Byron Blatty wines are grown.
Oh, Alonso family is Le Chêne's wine. Yeah.
Is that rosé that you brought us?
Yes, that's the Byron Blatty rosé. It's fantastic.
Yeah, they're good.
His
reds are very.
Oh, the Aurora. We have not had that.
Yes.
That's his white wine. That is LA County. It says it's Byron Blatty.
Now, listen, I'm actually curious. We used to be members of Pocella, which their winemaker makes the Byron Blatty wines, and we feel like his reds have just gotten.
I feel like the Antelope Valley with climate change has gotten harder to keep the alcohol, like the ABV, low enough because they're all shooting
their reds are like 6 or like almost 16%.
Yeah. He makes big wines, big wines. But I was on a tasting yesterday of Zinfandels, and I mean these are, what was this one? 14.8 and 14.9. Oh no, I know what it was. I was on a tasting the other night, Paso Robles, and Stacy was on it. I mean, these wines were 15.1, but really balanced and good. But yeah, hot regions make higher alcohol wines. So the key is not to judge a wine by looking at the alcohol content first. Taste a wine, because, you know, certain grapes, certain regions are going to result in higher alcohol wines. It doesn't mean you taste it. You might feel it, but you're not going to taste it. When the alcohol is out of balance and you get that heat, that's when there's a problem. But I mean, I tasted these wines that were 15, 16% alcohol the other day, and I knew they were big wines, but I never would have said they were out of balance or out of whack or something, if that makes sense. Yeah. Just don't judge a book by its cover.
As we're shit talking Temecula.
It's my one weakness, I have to say.
We were just so snobby, and then our takeaways, but don't judge.
Only judge when you're supposed to judge.
Well, I wrote a blog post. My wine of the week last week was a wine that Stacy had tried. It was the Dubost White. It was a non-vintage white wine, and it was actually really good. But I made every judgment before I opened. That's what I wrote about. I said, I tell people all the time not to judge a wine, and I did it. I looked at the color and I thought it's a little aged, and I said there's no vintage on it, and that makes me question and can't tell what the grape is, so God knows what's in there. And then I tried the wine and I'm like, this is actually a really good wine. And once the winemaker explained why they don't do a vintage and what they're blending in, and you know, I had to check myself. So
it's good to do that. I think one of the biggest takeaways about with wine for me has been every single time I feel like I get to the point where I'm like, I know everything, I very quickly realize that I know absolutely nothing. And I think it's a very humbling experience. And that's the whole reason why we do stuff like this, why we get together and taste wine with friends and go to blind wine tastings and all of the weird things that the wine industry encourages us to do, is because you truly don't know. You might know a very small fraction, like not even the master somms of the world know everything, because every single year there's a new whole group of wines that are being made, and maybe there's a different combination of, you know, winemaking techniques that have never been used before. And I think that's probably, at least for me anyways,
no, but it's, Gina, everyone can find a different thing. Like, you could end up becoming like the expert on the San Ynez Valley, but then you'd be utterly clueless about Sonoma and Napa or about the Loire Valley. Or you can be, I consider myself a generalist. I know a little bit about everything, but I'm not an expert in anything, because like you said, there are too many grapes, too many regions, too many vintages, too many wine producers. It's a never-ending quest of knowledge.
Yeah. And very fun to study.
Yes. Poor us.
Well, on that note, it's 7:30, and I just want to say, I know that people are dropping off and we will let all of you go, but thank you so much for joining in on this series. If it's your first series, if it's your first class, it's so much fun. It's such a great way to connect with you all. It's such a great way to taste new wines that we've never tasted before. We promise to always bring you weird wines from amazing places, and you'll all get a follow-up email. You'll all hear from us again. We hope you join us on our old world journey. And it's going to be really fun. Lots of, you're allowed to laugh at us when we can't pronounce anything. And then after that, I will also do a pre-tease. We're going to do South and Central America. We're going to do Mexico, Argentina, and Chile. And maybe we'll add more, but maybe not. But lots of really fun, awesome stuff there as well. So happy Friday. We love you guys. We love drinking with you. Thank you so much.
I know, a whole month off before I see everyone again. I'm so sad.
Amazing. Well, yeah, if you guys want to join, we will make it happen. And I also have, if you did want to if you wanted to purchase more of the wines that we tasted tonight, I literally have 2 bottles of the Shannon Blanc, and I think I have 8 bottles of the Cinsault. You'll get links to those, as well as the coupon code, that the virtual class coupon code that has been going on this whole time as well. So of course you guys get that special discount. But thank you guys so much. We will see all of you hopefully on March 19th for the Croatian kickoff. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Bye. Happy Valentine's
Everyone.
Day.
I'll see
Bye.
you tomorrow.
Gina and Mike stay. Gina and Mike stay. Bye, Jerry. I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.